Morning, everybody. Hope everybody has a fantastic morning and is ready to speak on the topic of marketing planning. I'm Paul Provost, founder and president of 6P Marketing. Suffice it to say, I've been in the advertising ad marketing industry for the better part of 20 years, actually over 20, and worked with hundreds of companies. I still love what I do, and my favorite thing is actually defining marketing plans for great people and then helping them to execute them. Also with me today is Farimah Hakemzadeh. She's our senior brand strategist. She's been with us 7 years and is a brilliantly talented individual, as you'll soon find out. Both our bios are on LinkedIn, so I won't go into deeper detail. All right, let's get into this a little bit. I do want to start by saying kudos to you for attending today. Taking the time to learn more and be curious on such a topic goes a great way towards helping you and your organization to achieve their goals. By my measure, it's about a 25% increase in your ability to achieve your goals. The second, and maybe the more important one, which is why this topic is so near and dear to me, is that when you write down a plan, I believe firmly that you stand a 50 to 75% chance of actually achieving those goals. And so when you are able to get you and your team to be able to review, approve, and provide feedback and refinements to a plan, I believe you stand a much greater chance at being able to achieve on that. And so on this, of course, if you need help with a plan, that's what we're here to help you with. But of course, the information we're going to provide you here with will go a long way towards your ability to do it for yourself. Of course, our team has 3 full-time strategists on our team that develop marketing plans and solve complex brand challenges. Key to our firm is our collaborative approach, where we work closely with our clients to develop the plans. This not only makes for better plans, but improves the likelihood of successful adoption. One of the things that makes our strategy team quite good is that they are immersed in a company that executes on those plans, so they see the results. They are complemented with designers, online marketers, web developers, media planners, marketing managers, directors, writers, content personnel. We're privileged to house almost 40 marketing specialists here at our firm, and we work with a great number of clients on helping them with achieving their goals. And so now on to our webinar. Today, we aim to help you such that you can do a plan for yourself, or at least understand the key components enough such that you can contract or work with somebody and know what they're going to be doing. In doing so, we will provide wisdom obtained over 20 or more years individually. I think Farimah would have probably 10 or more. I have 20 or more, and there's many others here that have many years of experience doing what we do, and probably over 200 plans or brand projects for a wide variety of companies. So now I'll hand the session over to Farimah. We'll start with our agenda and then a quick poll for you.
Hey, thank you so much, Paul. Okay, so thank you for joining us. Today on this webinar, we're going to talk about a few things. First, we're going to start with a bit of a warm-up, I always call it. Why do we think you cannot afford to not have a plan? So much of what you're experiencing might be there might be very similar experiences with the clients that we work with. So we will tell you how we think we can support you, or you can, get your own marketing planning to support you moving forward. Then we will talk about the marketing planning start to finish. We will talk about the key components we believe your marketing planning needs to have. And as I'm doing that, and that's the bulk of our session, we are going to share with you what we believe are the 6 hallmarks of effective marketing planning. Just the lessons that we've learned, that experience have shown us is very important in the success of what you're going to be doing with your market plan or with development of your market plan. I would like to leave some time for Q&A in the end, but feel free to share your questions as we talk. We will kind of get to them probably at the end and have some time to review some of these questions. Okay, so let's go ahead. So first thing I want to do is to ask you a question. Here we go. I'm going to launch this survey now. It's a very simple question. It asks you, do you have a marketing plan? If you have it today, your answer is yes. If it is in the works or you know you need it and it's still not done, that's totally fine too. And if you are going to now maybe decide that you want it, or you still don't have it and you know you want it, please let us know. Okay, answers are coming in. I have about 70% of you responding. I'll give it a bit more time in case anybody else wants to respond as well. Okay, going once, going twice. There we go. Let's look at our responses. So the majority of you do have a plan, and we do also have a few who do not, and a few who have a plan in the works. Okay, perfect. It's a good way of, us all measuring and me keeping in mind that, wherever you are with your processes. So even if you have a plan, today's conversation will kind of share some of the things that you might not necessarily have included, or things that you might want to change in the future, or, some different aspects of how marketing plan can be done. Okay, so why do we believe you cannot afford to not have a plan? We will put 6 reasons in front of you. First of all, aim before you shoot. That's the most important thing we want to do as strategists. We're very mindful of where you are today, where you need to be, and how to get you there. The marketing plan would provide that to you. It also provides you some efficiency. Very often we work with organizations who feel a bit of a, waste when they have to reinvent or reevaluate directions for the pieces of communication they do every now and then. We do understand that every piece is important and you want to spend time deliberately discussing each of them, but the direction in which everything is going can be figured out early on based on what you need to do with your organization's path towards your goals. And very often we work with organizations where we have, an organization that's growing, and maybe the owner or one person, one director in the office or in the company has been in charge of everything marketing. And as we're growing, they feel like it's too much. They feel like they don't have a support from the team. They cannot leave or transition that knowledge. A marketing plan allows you to do that. Decentralizing the responsibilities when it comes to marketing department is very, very important. We very often would work with organizations who feel that they cannot achieve their goals because they just cannot decentralize these responsibilities to the rest of their team. If you work with an organization within an organization that have to, either report to, well, your bosses, your CEOs, or board members, or even the stakeholders, you need to make sure you have a marketing plan to match the resources and expectations. Marketing, there's so much that's been asked of marketing people, and if you don't have that plan, it feels like if you're not receiving or reaching every expectation, you're failing. But when you put those in a document and show it to whoever that's in the decision making power for your organization, you will learn that you can have those conversations about, okay, if this is the expectation, I need these resources, and moving from there, everything would be easier. And of course, it's very hard to aim for a goal when you don't know how to measure the success of what you're doing. One part of what we do in a marketing plan, and I will get into it right away, is setting those goals and then matching our measurements or success measurements per those. So it would allow us to reach where we want to go and measure how the success is, what the progress towards success is. And it's almost daily when we work with organizations and marketing team who are just feeling stressed, feeling like there are some misunderstandings in between the team, feeling like there's a lot of, challenges when it comes to keeping things consistent, and all the worry of where this is going, and kind of getting very deep into day to day, and not being able to keep an eye on the far end goal. So again, this would allow us, a marketing plan would allow us to get past that and improve our levels of stress as we do the jobs that we do. Okay, those are 6 reasons you might have 3 more to add to this. We hope that you are on track as to what marketing plan do for you. These are the core components of what we believe your marketing plan needs. We're going to talk about each of them one by one. I'm going to start with growth goals and strategies right off the bat. So setting those measurable targets to reach and identifying strategies to reach them faster and easier. Okay, so one more question here. It's again a very simple question. This one asks you if you know the intentions of your organization in terms of growth for the next 3 years. Just guesstimation, whatever you think those numbers are. And if you don't know, there's an option where you can choose, I don't know. Okay, giving it a little bit more time. For those of you who have not answered to answer, we're at about 87%. That's great. Just had more participants join. So what are your organization's intentions in terms of growth for the next 3 years? Do you know? Do you know whereabouts that number is? Okay, I'm going to end this and share the results. So it is very understandable that that is not necessarily information that you might have. So I have a few who have answered, I don't know. We also have a few who've answered with numbers. The larger group would be the group in 5 to 20% growth. And that's what we very often see as well in the organizations we work with. Modest growth or kind of keeping steady would be 0 to 5%. And then very often there are very, drastic growth numbers that are put in front of us, which we have to have a conversation with the team and say, you need very much a lot of resources to be added to get those growths going on. So these numbers sound like very much what we see in the market as well. Okay, now why are we talking about growth? There's a very, very important reason, which is we like to frame the work of marketing and sales to directly kind of focus on where the growth goes. That's a very important lens. We believe not every organization keeps in mind when they're developing their marketing plans. But when you're thinking about the growth that the organization is going to have, you start from a place where, that's a language of everybody in this organization. It no longer becomes a marketing problem, it becomes a company's problem. And your marketing efforts will be feeding directly to where that growth needs to go. So asking all the CEOs and owners of organizations, what are your growth goals would be one of the first things that a strategist would do when they're thinking about developing a marketing plan for you. Which takes me to our first hallmark of effective marketing plan, look for the paved road. What do we mean by that is at this point, when you know that growth goal, you are to ask yourselves what strategy takes me to this goal further and faster. Not every path would be the right path. Also, taking all the paths is usually not the right idea. So choose that strategy. Sometimes that is, we need to make sure existing customers buy more from us. So they use more of their share of wallet with us. That directly focuses your marketing towards your existing customers. That happens very often when the research in the market shows that our existing customers do not know the breadth and depth of what we deliver, right? So when the awareness is lower there, that would be a great strategy to grow. Sometimes we're focusing on opening doors to new markets with major potential. Where is the biggest untapped investor pool, for example, if you're thinking about growing your investments? Or you lowest hanging fruits, where would we have to focus? So build your marketing strategy or, the growth strategy from there. Figure out what is the path that takes you there faster. That directly connects to the next topic where I'm going to talk about, which is marketing objectives. Most immediate needs your marketing efforts would have to focus on. Okay, so when we ask what does success look like to most of the clients that we work with and our leaders, there are two different ways of answering that. Very often we're talking about that growth numbers, right? The customer acquisition and revenue, so those growth goals. But also marketing performance and progress matters to us. We're marketers, of course, that's where we would go. So that's where your marketing objectives are. And growth goals would give you marketing objectives. Very often, the higher level leaders of organizations are not able to give you those marketing objectives. As marketers, our job is to draw those objectives from the growth goals that we receive from the organization. So for example, if customer acquisition and revenue goals are looking like this, in year this, we want this much revenue, we want this much revenue growth, or maybe it's about, the number of clients or existing clients or clients recapture, your marketing performance would be indicating where your traction would be for each of the marketing tactics that you're going to be running. How is it being evaluated in terms of effectiveness of your tactics or your creative approach? So things like, your website visitors, your number of meetings with new potentials, number of media mentions, anecdotal mentions, email newsletters, all of these become part of you defining your marketing performance and progress in different levels. So always think about those two. And how can my marketing objectives get me there? And what are the ways we're going to measure each of these? And that gets us to this point. What gets measured gets managed. We love this saying. It's not ours, but we love to say it all often. Always assess your marketing performance monthly. We like to see those numbers monthly. If one person in your team is in charge of gathering that information and keeping an eye on it, that would be great. And then discussing it quarterly would be very helpful. We understand that this frequency might be different for your organization depending on your circumstances. This is just, the number or the frequency that we very often see works for organizations. Okay, I think I'm doing good with time. Let's talk about highest priority audience profile. So in this topic, I mean, again, if your job is marketing, you probably have heard this language very often. We like to talk about the highest priority audiences. We like to profile them, discuss them. We also like to use the language bullseye audience, and I will tell you what that means. So defining target audiences as highest priority individuals we're speaking to and attempting to make a connection with. We like to keep it a bit general because very often the marketing plans would be focusing on a very specific group, whether it is government or investors or a category that's not necessarily even buying a product, but needs to buy an idea or kind of get on board with something that we're trying to achieve through our marketing. So that language works very well when you're kind of opening up that conversation. And our third hallmark that we really love to focus on and very often mention to clients is if you target everybody, you reach nobody. It's very important to think about where your bullseye audience is. We understand that prioritization becomes very hard. We very often talk to companies and organizations where they do not believe that they can neglect any of the category of audiences or customers they deal with. But we want to put to you that if you are saying everybody is your target audience, you're implying that your product or service is appealing to no one in particular. There is one group that your growth is being carried through based on the growth strategies we just discussed. So make sure that that's kind of clear when you're attempting to do that. Also, we know that there's a lower chance to succeed when your creative is supposed to talk to everybody and appeal to everybody. it's just really hard to achieve that. If you are working in the creative industry, you would know that very well. And also, the bigger your target audience is, the more costly it's going to be to reach them. So it's very helpful to prioritize, even if you have 2 or 3 categories of audiences you think are priority. That means you're not necessarily focusing on everybody, but we always want to see that one category, the top category that we need to focus on. So how do you get there? Ask yourself these questions. Again, very hard questions, but who's your ideal audience? Who's going to be the ideal audience you need to reach to your goals? Who can you reach at lower cost? Who can you persuade with less effort? Who can you convert that would increase your likelihood of converting others? This specifically is this language of converting is very helpful when you're talking, again, not about buying products or services, but investment or any other component of what a marketing plan can achieve for you. So think about those questions when you're trying to prioritize. Once you have prioritized, we recommend profiling these audiences, even if it feels like a given. Writing them down plays a major role in understanding who they are and then matching what you're doing to those people. Demographics and psychographics are probably the easier components, but when does the buyer purchase and how they make the decision are the 2 pieces that we really like to see in a marketing plan. And I will tell you a bit more about that. So what are demographics and psychographics? Demographics are probably, all familiar, whether it is gender, income, organizational title, whatever that gives you a bit of information about who you're trying to be focusing on and what sort of demographic background they have. In terms of psychographics, question you can ask yourself are, what are the common values of this person? What are their concerns? What are their interests? Where do you find them during their free time? Maybe if the topic is related, technologic adoption mindset or risk mitigation becomes also important things you can jot down when you're talking about your psychographics for the top audiences. Now, when does the buyer purchase? Think about it as purchase triggers. There's always something that precedes customers or audiences making a purchase or buying: issues, opportunities, incidents, or even seasonal timing, whatever that is for your organization or for what you are or your products or services. Write those down because that's very important for your thinking. And then how does the buyer evaluate? We like to talk about this in 3 categories. First, purchase criteria. What are the criteria that they use to compare one provider with another when they get to a point where they need to make that decision? Are they making that decision based on price, based on reputation, based on maybe delivery or product features, or cost of ownership? So it's not about the fact that I would pay this much today, but it matters to them. How long will this last me? What sort of lifetime can I get out of this product or service? Then resources and information sources that these buyers go to evaluate the information, whether at the beginning, so when they want to be aware of what are their options out there, but also when they want to get deeper into the knowledge of what is this exact provider going to give me versus that other provider. So that's also a very good place to spend some time kind of doing some analysis and gathering this information. And then last but not least, opinion influencers. Who are the people or influencers or organizations that our buyers or purchases or audiences would turn to for advice on what they would like to, or what provider they would like to use? So all of these pieces come together and build your profile for your audience profile within your marketing plan. Now let's talk about marketing messaging and tone. Now we're getting to a bit of like a core, I guess, of what a marketing plan provides. We like to put these 2 together, the tone and the message. So what and with what tone it's being conveyed, that would allow for us to be competitively advantageous and also speaking to the needs and wants of our audiences. This is my favorite diagram of all times when we're talking about positioning a brand or where our messages and tone will have to land. So if you have a company that you're kind of like, think about your own company, okay? So in this scenario, your company has services or capabilities or products. You also are very familiar with what your customers' needs are. So whether they want something fast or they want it of a certain quality, whatever that is, you kind of want to be in the place where these two match, right? So the company's capabilities and customer needs kind of pull together, and the place where these two are matching are where we want to be. But then another piece to this puzzle is to taking out what the competitive offerings are, which means if the customers need it and you can provide it, but every other organization out there or other competitors out there are also providing it, that's no longer your competitive advantage or your sweet spot for where your positioning needs to go. So the sweet spot is really where your customers are, where your company is, and what you can provide to those customers that would match their needs, taking out what other organizations can say as well or can do as well. So where is that place? What is the message that would match that position? An example would be, for example, if a message is a marketing message is, we strive to help you gain more insight from your data anytime, anywhere. I would call this tone helpful, eager. So where does this really land? We are assuming with this message that, well, first of all, we are able to provide that data anytime and anywhere with the extra information that our clients need. We're also assuming that the customers want it anytime and anywhere, right? So if that is true, this is a sweet spot for where we need to be. And it will be even better if our competitors cannot offer this. That takes me to the fourth hallmark of effective marketing. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Again, this is not a quote that we have come up with, but we really love it. Less is more is very, very important when it comes to developing your branding and brand strategy, messaging, marketing messaging. Our rule of thumb is top 3 key messages. They need to be simple, short, and clear, not 2 pages, not a long story. Top 3 key messages. And when it comes to tone and personality, throughout the years and kind of going through our experience, we like the 4-dimensional personality traits that makes things uncomplicated, replicable, and consistent when it comes to everybody in our organization who does marketing or communication on behalf of your company adhering to this. So 4-dimensional personality traits, 4 little words that define the personality of your brand, if your brand would be a person. Okay, that takes me to marketing tactics. We're doing good with time. I want to talk to you a little bit about marketing tactics that we define as mediums through which we get in front of our targeted audiences with our marketing messages. So it could be anything from website to your corporate profiles, whether they're, digital or, excuse me, or in a form of, a printed document or a folder of some sort. Trade shows are tactics, any media or PR work you would do, direct mail, networking, we call all of these tactics. And that takes me to our 5th hallmark of marketing planning effectiveness, and that is throw more than money at your marketing. That's a bit of a, shorthand saying something that may not necessarily be I know that in our world as marketers, we're talking about money. If it is our time or whatever, it still translates to money. But our goal here with this one is to share with you how we see marketing as a holistic piece with 4 different quadrants where you don't necessarily need to pay for placement, but there is much more that your marketing needs to do. And sometimes it's not as expensive as some of the promotional strategies out there. So sometimes it's work that you can do internally, or it requires presence of some sort that you can possibly have at lower cost. So the way we see marketing tactics holistically, we're going to talk about each of these quadrants separately. First of all, marketing material and resources. As an organization, as a marketer, as a marketing manager in an organization, you know that you need some foundational resources. So most of the time, these are one-time material development. You might need to update them, but these are, your tools, your website, your sales sheets, your even, development of certain strategies that would allow you to have the resources to then accomplish and execute on. So think about this as a separate component to your marketing. Then tools of organization and planning allows you and your team to really have those actionable steps figured out and have the marketing management power to achieve them. These tools support your planning, support your organization. They could be, calendars. They could be development of KPI programs where you can ensure that you can keep an eye on development of on progress of some of your key performance indicators. It could be also focusing on material that your team uses to report back to you as to how the progress is. Very often we also put in here some sales programs that you might need as a marketing team to lead, CRM, things like that, right? So information or tools that would help your organization plan and have power over the marketing efforts. Then let's talk about the promotional strategies. Those are the ones that very often come to everyone's mind first. Those are the paid positions, the media buys, the magazines, or online advertising campaigns, even if they're social media campaigns, whether there are pay-per-click campaigns, all of the ones that are really about a paid position for where your content is going to go. And then the last component, events and presence. Think about this also as a very important part of your marketing and communication. You need to be places, extend your reach through your physical presence. It could even include your, signage on your building if you have a prominent location. It would include presence of your team in conferences where there's an expertise being shared, and as thought leaders, you kind of want to be present there. It could be about sponsorships and trade shows and else. So looking at your marketing through these 4 lenses allows you to see that it's not always coming out of the marketing budget. Sometimes your team's effort or some presence out there or development of tools would become very important in reaching your goals and having a complete marketing plan that would help you get to your goals. When it comes to marketing plans, we always recommend identifying a long list first. What are all the things that we believe we need to be achieving or executing on, and then prioritize them from essential to nice to have, because we understand, as well as you understand, that every organization has limited resources, and there's always nuances that may change, and prioritization is very, very important. When you're developing your marketing plan, what do you need to talk about for each of these tactics? We recommend briefly describing the rationale for why this marketing tactic is a priority for you. Next 3 steps required to produce the tactic, length of the time that requires to be produced. If there are very specific calendar requirements, for example, you need to be in market at a certain time, you kind of have a specific trade show that you want to meet, or a specific timeline of some sort, or maybe your budget or annual, fiscal year would kind of have to come to an end at a point. And of course, when it comes to budgets, it's very helpful to point that also in your marketing tactics. So include these pieces in your marketing plan for it to become actionable. And let's talk about investment now that we're talking about budget. So first of all, I want to talk about investment as a delicate balance that everybody in the marketing world have to be very mindful of. We're yet to work with an organization that have the resources to do everything they need in their marketing team. There's always limitations, no matter how big your organization is. It's harder for some, but this balance is, our livelihood. We try to budget for what we need to do and prioritize as we go. One thing that I want to note here is marketing planning allows you to measure both the budget as the numbers, whether it is internal or external, but also how many hours it takes your team to accomplish things, internal or external, if you have, contractors, or you can get support from others as well. But those pieces kind of come together and give you what you need in terms of investment for the marketing plan that you have in front of you. You want to assess what you have access to in terms of budget and what you can make a case for from your leaders for requesting. So again, once you connect those dots all the way from growth goals to objectives and then down to this point and your tactics, that's where you can have a conversation where you say, this is going to cost me this much and I don't have the resources to really achieve it. And a very important step, we believe, is the comparison with industry benchmarks. What are those numbers that all the other organizations are adhering to in terms of their marketing budgets? It's always very helpful to look at the CMO survey for this one. CMO survey is not necessarily data that comes out of the same size organizations or specifically Canadian organizations, but it still gives you information that's very helpful. And we wanted to share this. This is the spring 2024 numbers and how marketing budgets vary by firm and industry. You would see that it's quite interesting in terms of the overall budget and overall revenue. It's floating around 10% of marketing expenses. And again, this would be the sample for this were 292 marketing leaders in the US, and these were for-profit companies, and relatively bigger because they have like VP level organizations. But as you can see, as the employee numbers grow, the marketing budget actually kind of comes down, it's like averagely, which is quite interesting. The first thing that I saw was that, and also in terms of revenue, you can see that. So think about what is the benchmark for your organization, for your industry, and where you need to be with your numbers. On the right-hand side down there, you can see that there are some sectors like energy and mining construction that have quite lower average marketing budget when it comes to their revenue, right? So comparison of that is very interesting and important for your decision making. And that gets me to the sixth: leadership consensus is half of the battle. Why do we say that? We are very often dealing with this. We are very often working with organizations where a good portion of what we would do as a strategist to try to ensure that leadership agrees on the path moving forward. One of the best ways to do that is to involve leadership in however way you can in your marketing planning efforts. The selection criteria we often put in front of our clients when they ask who should we bring to this meeting or who should we include in our interviews or whatnot is this. So we like to always have the key personnel with deep knowledge about the company in those conversations. These are the people who, understand the business strategy and past marketing efforts. It's always helpful. Key personnel in charge of moving the work along, like marketing experts or the main contact that we have to deal with needs to be involved. Key personnel who will issue the final approval of the deliverables. That's very important, right? You kind of want to make sure they're involved from the beginning. They're not surprised with this long document. They don't know how we got there, right? So building that step by step plays a major role in ensuring that they are receptive to the results. And of course, people who are in charge of executing the plan after the approval. These are the people we believe need to be involved in the thinking. You can also involve your customers in your planning process. Part of what we do in strategy department is to gather the information we need, whether it is internally or from customers. Sometimes we have the luxury and budget to conduct like a full-on survey or, have focus groups put together when we can talk about everything we're trying to learn about our target audiences with them in the room. Sometimes we only have access to the actual existing customers of our organization, but you know what? That's very, very helpful when we try to grab some of the information we want, because your customers will tell you, they will feel also involved and very much, appreciated as you ask them what they need from you, what they have had an experience that they want to see differently or change. We always recommend running these by a third-party provider, whether it is a marketing firm or else. It allows for them to be easily share all the good news and bad news and not feel that they have to only talk about the good. So leadership team, implementation team, Salesforce of organizations are effectively people who are constantly in touch with your customers. Customer service as well. Customer service team is always very much involved. They just have another lens to what your customers are thinking, and they can support the marketing planning effort with that knowledge. How do we include these key people? There are multiple ways. We often develop questionnaires that would go to them. We run quite long planning sessions, half-day planning sessions, and have key decision makers involved. We facilitate those so it's kind of going smooth and all the information on prep is there to ensure that the time is well spent. Also, one of the strategies we very much like is to have early presentations done with key members. Sometimes, the entire client team, including the board members or, officials will be in a certain presentation, but it's always helpful to have an early presentation to, your marketing expert on the team or the person that you are predominantly working with for this marketing plan, and review the information they give you and then go to your next meeting with that in mind. So including key people in the process is probably the part of this process that would take a little bit of time from you, but it's always very helpful. Okay, time for another question. And this one would be about, let me bring it up. If you were to be running this planning process today, who do you need to include in your marketing planning process? And you can choose as many options as are applicable to you. Who do you need to include in your marketing planning process? And choose as many as applicable to you. Okay, responses are coming in. Seeing about 60% of you responded. We'll give it another minute. Okay, more responses coming in. Okay, going once, going twice. There we go. Let's see the responses. Okay, so head of marketing team and marketing team members. Quite a few of you chose CEO and president. Again, you know, the discussion we just had, it's very helpful to involve those who are going to be at the higher level, approving the budgets, the work. Many of you mentioned members and stakeholders, very helpful, sales and customer service. And quite a few of you also chose the finance team. That's an important directorial position in some decision making as well. So consider including all of these groups for better success. And the last component I want to talk about is implementation chart. It's always helpful to have an actionable and step-by-step plan figured out. Now, it's funny when you put all of this information together and you have a marketing plan, it feels like your job is done. That's not our experience. Very often organizations get stuck at that point. What does that mean? That means that Gantt charts are very helpful. Those are actually visual support tool that would allow each individual tactic to kind of have the scope details and development milestones and responsibilities and timelines kind of pushed out on it. This is an example. It's not necessarily a complete example, but when are things happening? Who is doing them? What sort of timelines you have? This becomes a very, very important step to ensure your marketing plan is not going to stay on a shelf and do not do anything for your organization. Okay, so reminding ourselves of the 6, look for the paved road. Very important to know where is the fastest, most efficient way to get to your growth goals. Make sure you're measuring as you're going, otherwise you're missing something. Targeting everybody is not a great idea. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Always think to simplify your positioning specifically, but also every aspect of what your marketing plan is. Throw more than money at your marketing. Look at your marketing tactics holistically, and leadership consensus is very, very important. Okay, I want to ask Paul to get back in this conversation as we are kind of wrapping up. We have some time for questions, but you will have access to many resources from our organization. We have, e-newsletters that go out every now and then, so feel free to sign up from our website. We very often run marketing events or workbooks that we can share with you. We're happy to do that. You can also check out our insights on our website where we share some of this information. We are happy to sit with you and just talk about what your challenges are at no charge, an hour of consultation, just discussing where you come from with your marketing efforts. And please request this PowerPoint by emailing to us. Just email us and ask for this PowerPoint. We're happy to share it with you. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Farimah. So yeah, before we get to questions, just a couple of thoughts. That was great, of course. 1 hour on marketing planning is a lot of information. So we'll get to questions here in just a second. Couple of just thoughts that went through me as we were speaking here. The first is on benchmarks. You saw a slide there that sort of attested to 10%, which I would add 2 things. One is you have to make sure that you compare it to your region. So Winnipeg, that would be a very US centric study and also a very large entity kind of study. So if you're a smaller business or organization and you're in Winnipeg as an example, certainly the numbers are going to skew a little differently. So just always compare, have a frame of reference for those kinds of metrics. And then the other related to metrics is most of you are probably part of an industry association. And so industry associations actually do, generally speaking, a good job of gathering industry benchmark data. So oftentimes you can find that data there. So that's always helpful. And then Statistics Canada also does a pretty good job of publishing some pretty good data on industry sectors. So you can always look there for those benchmark notes. The second note was about marketing plans. I think we leaned a little heavy on, call it revenue or growth from a percentage size of entity. But oftentimes marketing isn't necessarily just about revenue or growing a business. It can be just about affecting perceptions or awareness, not necessarily with a growth in mind. So oftentimes messages like impacting audiences in terms of perceptions can be, especially for associations or not-for-profit organizations, that's a very good tenet for them. And we do an awful lot of those as well. So just want to make sure that that was clear. And then the last one with regards to growth, many of you noted 5 to 20% as one of those benchmarks. I think at that level, a plan is helpful. But if you're anywhere over 20%, a good plan is absolutely a must. So just one of those notes that I wanted to make mention of. So with that, we'll get to a couple questions. We have, I think, somewhere in the order of 5 minutes or 7 minutes. I don't know if Farimah, you want to chime in, but I had one come in. So one of the questions had to do with research. How much research should one do as a function of a marketing plan? So I'll start with Farimah, maybe.
Sure. I hate to do this, but it depends. So when it comes to the amount of research, we always start by, of course, the actual team in front of us. If the information you need, you have, great. In conversations we have, very often starting with a planning session, we ask very specific questions about, who your audiences are, or maybe where they kind of, what are their profiles and concerns, and what are their perception levels for certain things, awareness levels, things like that. And then more in depth with all the other information. And if we're receiving a lot of I don't knows, or that's a great question, that's when we are very often triggering a conversation about whether it's helpful for us to do some more research. As I mentioned, research does not necessarily need to be a very expensive undertaking where you go to the entire, I don't know, province or country and ask questions, but it could very much start by talking to your existing customers, or having if you have access to a membership group or else, right? So there are multiple ways to do that, and budget varies, and it really depends on where your existing knowledge is, what your organization have done in due diligence, in grabbing information from the past, even the data that you have received from your website or ad campaigns or else. That's all going to be helpful for us understanding or gathering the information we need to develop a proper marketing plan. Paul, would you like to add something?
Add a couple things. First, I think the first thing is budget. Like if you have a finite budget, which everybody does, but research can take time. A schedule and budget would be the first categories. Is just if you don't have the time to do the research or you don't have the budget, that kind of factors in. The second is the consequences of accuracy. If the consequences of not delivering on your goals are consequential, then investing in good research can be very important. How much market intelligence? I think that's sort of the cornerstone that Farimah was talking about. Is if you have it, then you don't need as much research inputs. And then the last is if the group that is put together to form the marketing plan from the client's perspective has a pulse on the client and the market. The greater they have the pulse, the less the need for the research. But if they're, the CEO who's dealing with CEO type problems and isn't dealing with customer service issues all the time, perhaps they're sort of 2 or 3 rungs from the day-to-day of what's going on. So that objective market data can be very important for that. So that's what I would add to that question. We had another one come in, which is a very interesting one. Often find that measurement can be difficult in the not-for-profit world, as organizations typically aren't as revenue and sales driven. So maybe Farimah, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to we do like to open the entire topic of marketing and communication to it's not about just selling a product or a service, right? That's why we try to kind of use that language. So we're very familiar with this. We work with a lot of not-for-profits, very often on the topic of perception, awareness. Those are two measurements that very often we work on with our not-for-profit organizations. There was no question really here, but I would kind of ask this question from Paul. So where do you go, do you think, for gathering the information of perception, for awareness or perception for our customers and audiences?
Well, I think the first thing I would recognize is, when it comes to sales and revenues, it's very measurable. What we're describing here is something that is possible to measure, but it's a little more elusive. We use descriptions as quantitative and qualitative data. And so oftentimes the qualitative side of the inputs is as important or more important than the quantitative. But we use tools like omnibuses to measure perception changes. So what you're looking for, you want to take an objective baseline measurement of whatever it is that you're trying to affect. And then over a period of time, you want to work at changing or affecting or impacting that perception, and then measure the change over time. So many of the organizations that we've worked with for some time, we would do, say, an omnibus poll, an email poll of, say, Manitoba residents. I would go out in point one, we would work on advertising over the course of the year to affect that perception. And then at the end of a year, we might measure it again. And so, you're talking about moving the needle on certain perceptions and impacts and you can get pretty narrow on certain groups and whatnot. So there are tools. They're just less precise as sales and income that come from your account kind of idea, right? So they're a little more challenged, and they can take a little bit of money to put together as well. So that's where I would go with
There's
that.
always also, adoption numbers. If you have a membership that you need them to, take a certain action or adopt a certain things, there are ways to measure that. Another way of measuring some of these, interactions is when you're running a campaign, you can always ensure that you're on the back end, you have that data being captured, right? Or if you have a landing page that you have designed, where they go, how many people click on things. Those are also helpful in measuring where your efforts are going, even if it's not necessarily ending in sales, but it kind of shows the performance of some of your tactics.
That's perfect. Okay, well, I think we're at time here. So of course, if you have a follow-up question, feel free to email either Farimah or myself. We're happy to provide any advice or counsel at no obligation and no cost. So thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you guys another time. Good luck.